Very good evening. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Yuki Portia. Before we head into your stories in detail, let's start off with a look at tonight's headlines.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
The country fell back due to COVID-19. President apprises BIMSTEC. Prime Minister of Bangladesh says Bangladesh maintained a growth of 6.3% despite COVID-19. Imran Khan at risk of losing a no-confidence motion brought against him for destroying the economy. 13-hour power cuts announced for tomorrow.
දෙවියෝ රැස්ස දේවි තෙල් ටිකක් කල්ලි තිබුණොත් ලැබේවි එහෙම වුණොත් පමණයි අපිට එලියක් සහිතව අවුරුද්ද සමරන්න.
Angry mob closed down a road demanding diesel. Risk of public transport being crippled due to fuel shortage. Shortage of medicine and medical equipment disrupt surgeries at hospitals.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Starting off with your top story tonight, the power crisis in the country has severely disrupted the day-to-day lives of the people. Now, many areas are experiencing a 10-hour power cut today. In addition, public transport services have been affected due to the shortage of diesel. Vehicular movement along the Badulla-Bandarwala main road was obstructed by the people who were waiting in a queue to purchase diesel at the Bandarwala Sipetco filling station. Meanwhile, the Bandarwala Urban Council ground was to be declared open today by Sports Minister Namal Rajapaksa.
මාසයක් ඉවසුවා පුළුවන් විදිහට මේ සෙඩ් එකේ එක දවසක් ඉන්න අනිත් සෙඩ් එකේ තව දවසක් ඉන්න අපිට ජීවිතයක් නැති වෙලා තියෙනවා. මෙතන මේ බේබි මාත්‍යා ඇවිල්ලා අද බණ්ඩාර නගර සභා ක්‍රීඩාංගණය ඕපන් කරනවා. සප ගන්නවා. මහ ජනතාව මේ පොලිමේ මේ පොඩි මිනිහෝ ඔක්කොම මෙතන දුක් විඳිනවා. අපිට විසඳුමක් දෙන්න නැහැ කවුරුත්.
Minister of Sports Namal Rajapaksa responded to this in Colombo.
මම හිතන්නේ ඒ ජනතාවට වැරදි මතයක්.
I think the people are of the wrong opinion. A rumor was spread that since I am going to Bandarwala, the queue was relocated. We do not organize any events or programs that would disrupt the livelihoods of the general public. We think this was merely an attempt to spread false information and mislead the public.
මෙය සම්පූර්ණයෙන් හුදෙක් මඩගැසීම සඳහා මේ ජනතාව නොමග යැවීමක් සහ බොරු ප්‍රචාරයක් යැවීමට ගත්ත උත්සාහයක් විදිහට තමයි අපි දකින්නේ.
While the people were standing in queues to purchase fuel, the mayor of Bandarwala declared open the urban council ground.
Minister Namal Rajapaksa was to attend this event, but he had another event to attend. But I decided to open this ground today.
A tense situation arose at another fuel station in Bandarwala this morning. The police later intervened and took steps to issue fuel to the people. Meanwhile, a group of people at the filling station in Town Hall, Colombo, staged a protest, obstructing the vehicular movement along one lane of the road.
සාහන රසක් හම්බ වෙනවා කියලා හම්බුනේ මොකද්ද? ඩීසල් මිල වැඩි කරා, පෙට්‍රල් මිල වැඩි කළා. වැඩි කළාත් බඩු නෑ. අන්නත් නෑ, අන්තිම ලයිටුත් නෑ, කරන්ටුත් නෑ. හා? මොකද්ද මේ කරුමේ? කියලා වැඩක් නෑ. අපි දුක් විඳලා මෙතනද. ආත් අවුරුදු 59කට මේ වගේ දැස් දැකලා නෑ මේ වගේ. අයින් කරන්න මහත්තුරේට අපිට ගහයියන්න තෙල් නෑ. දැන් මේක තල්ලු කරන් යන්නේ. මෙතන නවත්තපුවම තෙල් ගහන්න මේ කට්ටිය දඩකොලේ ලියලා දෙනවා. ආද මම කතා කරලා එතන කලබල කරන්නේ. තෙල් වලට සල්ලි බැඳන් කරලා තමයි තෙල් එන්නේ. දැන් ඇමතිතුමා හිතාගෙන ඉන්නේ අපි මේ බබ්බු කියලා. එහෙම තෙල් විකුණගෙන යන්නේ එළවලු විකුණනවා වගේ. ප්‍රශ්නයක් කියලා තෙල් තියාගෙන දෙන්න කියලා. නෑ නෑ අපිට එහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. අපිට මේ මනුස්සයා තෙල් තිබ්බනම් අපිට තෙල් දුන්නා. හරි. මම දැන් මේ එල් එක ටැංකි දෙක අරවන්න ගෙනාවේ. මහත්තයා ඕක ටැංකියේ හරියට වැඩක් නෑනේ. අපි දන්නවා ඕක තෙල් නෑ කියලා. මේ මහත්තයාත් අපිට කිව්වා. පිළිගන්නව නෑ ඉතර.
The Hatton-Colombo main road was also closed down by a group of protesters in Hatton. The protesters said that although they have been at the fuel station for 2 days, they had still not received any fuel.
सीट पे बस चढ़ के दोना पानी पाना डीजल नहीं पेट्रोल नहीं
Vehicular movement along the Hatton-Colombo road was disrupted for about an hour due to the protest. The police took steps to remove the protesters from the road. A tense situation arose at a fuel station in Gampaha since diesel was only being issued to government vehicles.
මේ ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂට කියන්න අයින් වෙලා යන්න කියලා. මේ උදේ ඉඳන් මේ මිනිස්සු රස්තියලු කරන්නේ. දැන් ඊයේ රාය ඉඳන් හිටු මිනිස්සු ගොඩක් ඉන්නවා මෙතන. අපි ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති නෙවෙන විදිහට වැඩ කරද්දිත් ඒත් දෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Steps were taken to issue fuel to the people up to a limit of 2,000 rupees. Long queues were seen across the country today to purchase diesel.
තෙල් එනවා කිව්වටකෝ අරෙන් නැව් බෑව මෙහෙන් නැව් බෑ කියලා උන් හොරා තුට්ටු දෙක හොරා කාලා එදට වෙලා ඉන්නවා අපිට අපි තමයි අහිංසක මිනිහා තමයි ඉවර වෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මුන් මොනව කරනවද දන්නේ නැහැ මේ රටේ. අපි අන්ත ආසරණ වෙලා තියෙන.
දැන් දවස් 4ක් ඩීසල් ලීටර් 10කට මේ පාරේ රස්තිය දිනවා. ඇයි මේව කරන්න බෑ යන්නේ?
Drivers of all buses say that fuel is not being issued from the Mutharajawala petroleum terminal. This is how many buses have been parked in the vicinity of the refinery.
දැන් ඩීසල් නැහැ කියනවනේ. නැවක් ඇවිල්ලා දිනවද තාම අරගෙන නැහැ කියනවා. ඩීසල්ුත් නැහැ පෙට්‍රෝලුත් නැහැ. බෑගුවම මොකද කියන්නේ? ආයෙත් බසල් ඉස්කම පෙට්‍රෝල ගමයි ඒවට දෙන්නේ.
People in Mavanala were standing in a queue to purchase kerosene oil today despite heavy rains.
The chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation expressed his views on the prevailing power crisis in the country at a media briefing held at the Presidential Secretariat today. Our fuel usage has increased by 30 to 35% when compared with the past few years. We have received support from the Indian Credit Line Facility to import fuel for the month of April. We will receive adequate amounts of petrol and diesel and jet fuel for the month of April without any delay. I believe we will be able to supply fuel during the month of April without any shortage. The chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation may have forgotten that there was a lockdown imposed during the years 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While the chairman keeps on setting dates to resolve these issues, the trade unions today revealed the root cause of this crisis.
A
ship carrying diesel was purchased under an emergency purchase agreement. They had the ability to import fuel without any shortage until the end of May. If we had imported these stocks, we could have supplied it to the electricity board without any shortage. When we had this option, they struck an underhand deal and brought this shipment under an emergency purchase. As it has been 6 days since the vessel carrying 37,000 metric tons of fuel arrived at our port, the reason why they asked us not to queue up at filling stations is because they cannot pay $52 million for this vessel, and they have to wait until India comes to the rescue. This crisis was created by these ministers within the ruling faction. Their greed for commissions through emergency purchases caused this crisis today.
Prolonged shortage of diesel has increased the risk of public transport systems coming to a grinding halt.
What will happen to the SLTB?
Sri Lanka Transport Board said that they had to seek fuel from other depots as they did not receive adequate fuel for 6 depots in the country. Deputy General Manager of the Transport Board, A.H. Panduka Swarnahansa, said that the bus timetable has been amended, giving more priority to busy routes and rush hours.
What will happen to the private buses?
We cannot stand by and do nothing. We are warning the government. If you don't resolve this economic crisis, we will refrain from providing our services. We have already discussed with our members on this, and we are continuing discussions as well. We have many issues that need to be resolved. We cannot bear this anymore.
What will happen to school transport services?
The Sipetco chairman has requested us not to queue up at filling stations for diesel. We were made to stay in queues for days. We suffered a lot to obtain a can of diesel. There is no diesel anywhere around Colombo. We have no other option but to halt our service. Gum at the V-Force members took steps to distribute bottles of water to the public who have been standing in queues all day to purchase fuel and gas. Bottles of water were distributed to people standing in queues in the Colombo and Kegal districts. Many donors joined hands with Gum at the V-Force to make this endeavour a success. Gum at the V-Force members ensured that all used bottles were collected in a bid to ensure that the environment is not polluted. Several other organisations were also seen distributing bottles of water to the public who had been standing in queues all day to purchase essential items. Gas crisis.
There seems to be no end sight for the gas crisis either. Residents of Ukwata Gintota weathered the rain today to stay in line, hopeful of purchasing a gas cylinder. An irregularity regarding tokens led to an altercation between the police and citizens waiting in line for gas opposite a gas distributor in the Badulla town.
ඊ අවස්ථාවේ ඉඳලා තමයි මේකේ ටෝකන් එක ගත්තේ. දැන් මේ ටෝකන් එක අරගෙන තායි පොලිස්. මෙති ගොල්ලොන්ට ලැජ්ජනාර කපලා තියෙන්නේ. ලැජ්ජනාර තියනවා නම් මේ ජනතාවගේ දුක දන්නවා. එතකොට ඉල්ලාස් වෙලා ඉදිරියට ජනතාව ඉදිරියට යන්න පුළුවන් කියලා මතයක් තියෙයි.
Gas was distributed in Balangoda at the police station. Electrogas has made a request to hike the price of gas once more.
ඔව් එහෙම ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒක මම සඳහන් කරලා තියෙන කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට
ගෑස් සැපීමේ ගිවිසුම සම්බන්ධයෙන් පෙබරවාරි මාසේ අවසන් වන ඊට වෙනත් සමාගමත් සමග දැන් ගිවිසුමක් අත්සන් කරලා තියෙනවද නැත්නම් කොහොමද තාම ඒ කියන්නේ ඕපන් ටෙන්ඩර් එකකටද ගන්නේ ක්‍රමවේදය කොහොමද වෙන්නේ?
මේ වන විට ගෑස් මිලදී ගැනීම සඳහා
A tender to supply gas for 1 year has been announced. A committee appointed by the cabinet through the SCAP method has not approved a tender and it is in its final stages. Our first priority is to provide gas to the people considering the current situation of the country. We cannot experiment anymore. We can provide the tender to the current supplier to provide gas for an extended period.
පවතින සමාගමට තවත් ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන් ගෑස් යම් කාලයක් සඳහා.
ඕමාන් ට්‍රේඩින් සමාගම. කලින් ඔය අවුරුදු දෙකක දීලා තිබ්බේ කනිල් සභාපතිවරයා ඉන්නකොට ඒ සමාගම තවදුරටත් සපයන්නේ.
ඒ සමාගම තමයි අපි මේ දැන් ටෙන්ඩර් එක කෝල් කරලා තියෙන අලුත් ටෙන්ඩර් එක දෙනකන් දැනට මේ
ඒකේ දැන් ඔබතුමාම සඳහන් කරානේ ඒක යම් ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා කියලා. ඒක ලබා දීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඒ සමාගමත් එක්කම තවදුරටත් යන්න පුළුවන්ද සහ ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔබතුමන්ලා ඉදිරි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග අරගෙන තියෙනවද?
මම සඳහන් කරේ නියමිත ක්‍රමවේද අනුව සිද්ධ වෙනවා නම් ඒ පිළිබඳව ගැටලුවක් නැහැ කියලා ඔබට ඒක බලන්න පුළුවන්.
what will happen to the health sector?
Shortage of medicine and medical equipment at national hospitals have increased the risk of public health sector being crippled. The Karapitia Teaching Hospital in Galle has taken steps to suspend non-risky surgeries due to the lack of anesthetic medication. Our correspondent stated that the director of the hospital, Dr. Shelton Pereira, had informed the anesthesiologists about this in a letter last evening. Meanwhile, patients allege that there is a shortage of medicine issued for clinics at the Colombo National Hospital.
There's a shortage of medicine at the National Hospital. If you can't find medicine at the main hospital, just imagine the state of other hospitals. This shortage of medicine is not an issue that arose suddenly. People who import and distribute it warned about this shortage a month ago. Relying on our recommendations, these pharmaceutical importers associations even warned the State Minister of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Chandra Jayasumani, in writing about the shortage. They even issued media releases warning about it. It is clear that there is a shortage of medicine right now. The worst part is there is a shortage of pharmaceuticals used to treat cardiac and diabetic patients.
Meanwhile, scenes were captured by our cameras where vehicles belonging to the health services were waiting in the fuel queue at Union Place, Colombo today. The shortage of diesel has now affected the maintenance of health services as well.
The Minister of Health views the present crisis in the following manner.
No, that has not happened. That is a false claim. There are certain inconveniences, I won't deny it, but it can still be resolved. I saw that tweet as well. It was sent to me. We had taken action by the time he saw it. I cannot help the fact that you did not report it. We delivered the necessary equipment by 7 in the morning. There was a circular issued to stop surgeries. Once we saw it, the relevant medical equipment was sent. Around $80 million have been allocated through the Indian credit line to import medicine. There is an issue with imports. The President has constantly asked us to prioritize health. There are certain shortcomings, but those can still be rectified. When we cannot do that, I will let you know.
Still in local news, silent vigils were held across the country amidst mounting issues that are yet to be resolved.
I'm standing here in front of the clock tower in the center of the city of Kandy. As you can see, people have gathered here to express their displeasure at the course of actions of the government. As you can see, people from many walks of life have gathered here. There are professionals, priests, students, people from low-income families. All of them have gathered here to show that this economic crisis is affecting everyone equally in the country.
I mean, it's pretty unfair what we are going through right now. As a teacher who is working in the university, I can see that still students are struggling. It's very difficult for the students and even everyone in the country.
Sri Lanka, unfortunately, has become a pauper's den. We were born here as free citizens. We have been living very peacefully, very happily. But today, people are going through the worst of times. I'm very sorry to say that Sri Lanka is now a den of thieves.
I am very sad about the situation in the country, and many people are suffering. Also me, we came here to make big business, invested a lot of money. We can't do anything. We can't drive a car because no fuel. My son cannot learn because we have no electricity. We can't cook because gas is not there. The situation is very, very bad. I'm very sorry for all Sri Lankans.
We've been witnessing several protests staged across the country against the rising cost of living. And right now I'm here in Town Hall opposite the Vyar Mahadevi Park, where a similar protest staged by the general public is currently underway. Now, what's special about this particular protest is that none of these protesters behind me are affiliated to any political party. These protesters here are demanding a solution to the rising cost of living.
From the onset of this crisis, we have joked about it. We've made memes about it. We've done a lot of stuff about it. We've ridiculed every single politician who's responsible for this. We've basically made 101 memes about this entire crisis. And in the middle of all this, some people even had the nerve to ask us, what exactly is the crisis? Well, here's your crisis.
අපේ සල්ලි වලින් ඕගොල්ලෝ සැප විඳින ගමන් ඕගොල්ලෝ අපෙන් ඉල්ලනවා කැපකිරීම කරන්න කියලා. පැය දෙකක් තුනක් 10ක් 13ක්. ඕගොල්ලෝ අපෙන් මොනවද තව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ? මේක අපේ රට. මේක ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ රට නෙමෙයි. ඕගොල්ලෝ දුවන්නේ අපේ සල්ලි වලින්.
It's high time that we as a nation take to the street and stand up against all the corruption and all the ill doings of this government.
We cannot have 2 more years of this. There has to be a change, and the change will never come from one person. There will never be one person who comes into power and saves all of us. There only can be salvation through the people.
From my previous stop opposite the Vihara Mahadevi Park, I've come to the Liberty roundabout, where a similar protest staged by the general public is currently underway.
We have a finance minister who has an advisory council which has another advisory council to advise that advisory council, and that advisory council advises him to get an advisory council. If he has so many people advising him, I mean, why do we need a finance minister?
You know, Martin Luther King said, it's not the evil deeds of the wicked, but the appalling silence of the good. I can tell you that today there is no silence for the good. We're all out here to protest. Initially they tried to separate us with race. It didn't work. Then they thought, okay, religion. Let's attack the Muslims. It didn't work. We're not fools. We are not uneducated people. We are here because we want to live a decent life. We want a decent life. We are hard-working people. We pay our taxes. I work 7 days a week.
මේ ආණ්ඩුවට ශක්තිය ලැබිලා තියෙන්නේ හැමදාම අපේ වෝට් එක හැල්ලුවට ලක් කරලා පිළිමාරු වෙන දේශපාලකයන් හින්දා.
Whoever it is can't handle it, need to give it to somebody who can handle it and then find a solution.
News First with the people.
The Engineers Association of the Ceylon Electricity Board warns that if sufficient stocks of fuel are not delivered on time, timings of scheduled power outages will have to be further increased. Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka has granted permission to the CEB's request to impose 13-hour power cuts for tomorrow.
පැහැදිලිවම දැන් තියෙන තෙල් අපිට ලැබිච්ච ප්‍රමාණය අනුව පැය 10ක්.
I must clearly state that according to the amount of fuel that we receive today, power will have to be disrupted for a period of 10 hours. If this situation continues, the duration of power cuts will have to be increased. Thermal power plants only have fuel sufficient for about 2 to 3 days. Thereby, we will have to increase the duration of power cuts. If we are provided with fuel, we can ensure the supply of electricity. We request the government and relevant institutions, including the CPC, to grant us fuel. We can reduce the duration of power cuts if so. If we do not receive fuel or rain, people will have to be in the dark. Out of the two, gods will provide rain and we can pay to obtain fuel. It is only if one of these that we will only be able to celebrate the new year without being in the dark if either one of these happen.
අපිට එලියක් සහිතව අවුරුද්ද සමරන්න වෙන්නේ.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, is at risk of losing his office. He has been accused of mismanaging the country's economy. The MQM party, which was a member of Pakistan's governing coalition, has expressed their support to a no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister and joined hands with the opposition. The Minister of Justice and the Minister of Communication of Imran Khan's government have resigned from their positions today. A total of 7 members of the MQU party have pledged their support to the opposition. Thereby, Prime Minister Imran Khan has lost his majority in parliament. As it stands, 177 members of Pakistan's National Assembly are supporting the opposition, while 164 members support Prime Minister Imran Khan. The debate on the motion of no confidence will begin tomorrow, while the vote on the no confidence will be taken up on the 3rd of April. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan's address to the nation, scheduled for today, has been postponed. Let's now toss over to a short commercial break. Do stay with News First. We will be right back.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Register today for a Zoom workshop on new technology.
in Sinhala. Internet of Things for modern agriculture. 31st March at 3 p.m. Register via 0777 60020.
Organised by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education.
Welcome back to the news. Still in news here at home, addressing the 5th BIMSTEC summit in Colombo this morning, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said Sri Lanka is facing the worst crisis owing to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also addressing the summit, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said even during the COVID-19 pandemic, Bangladesh maintained a 6.3% growth for 2021. The leaders of Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Thailand, Nepal and Sri Lanka and the Foreign Minister of Myanmar joined the 5th BIMSTEC summit online today. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa declared open today's BIMSTEC summit in his capacity as the chairperson.
The world has faced its worst crisis this century with the COVID-19 pandemic. Rising oil prices, freight charges and supply constraints arising from the pandemic are causing inflation around the world. The economic consequences of the pandemic were especially severe on Sri Lanka. However, I am confident that together with the remarkable strength and resilience of our people tried and tested over time and the cooperation of our regional and international partners, Sri Lanka will prevail over these difficulties and engineer a rapid economic recovery. Striving to increase trade and investment activities within the region is important. Given its strategic location at the center of the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka is well poised to play a role in fostering intra-regional trade. We are committed to increasing contribution of renewable energy sources to 70% of national power needs by 2030, achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 and ensuring no new coal power projects.
Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina remained upbeat on her country's progress.
Bangladesh is one of the top 5 fastest growing economies in the world. Even during COVID-19 pandemic, we maintained a 6.3% growth last year. Just last week, we brought 100% population under electricity coverage.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressed the summit.
It has also become essential to give greater priority to our regional security. India will provide the Secretariat with financial assistance of $1 million to increase the Secretariat's operational budget. It is also time now to go beyond discussions on electric grid interconnectivity and to operationalize it.
The leaders of other countries spoke about boosting cooperation over security, energy and economic affairs in the region. The BIMSTEC Secretary General also presented his report. He spoke exclusively to Newsfirst on a BIMSTEC program to conduct 267 projects relating to transport at a cost of $124 billion.
This master plan was developed by EGB in consultation with all the 7 member states. I'm definitely sure there are projects that Sri Lanka can take up in maybe in a month's time. We hope to bring all the member states together once again and discuss on the master plan and actually translate the plan and the document into implementation. It is up to the member states to find the financiers and how to implement. It is up to the member states now.
The 7 BIMSTEC countries also signed a charter outlining the future goals and objectives of this particular body. In addition to that, we also saw 3 agreements being signed. One of these agreements was in providing legal advice when dealing with criminal matters. The other agreement was signed on establishing a technological transfer facility here in Colombo, while the third agreement was on enhancing cooperation between diplomatic training institutes in the 7 BIMSTEC nations.
At the end of today's summit, Sri Lanka handed over the chairmanship of BIMSTEC to Thailand. The trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange was halted twice today. This was due to the S&P SL20 index dropping over 7.5% from the previous close. The Colombo Stock Exchange closed on a negative note today after its benchmark all-share price index dropped to 9,294, the lowest reported since the 27th of September last year. The S&P SL20 index dropped 155 basis points to close at 3,182 this evening. The daily turnover stood at 3.3 billion rupees. Sri Lanka's workers' remittances dropped to $205 million in February this year, the lowest monthly inflow reported since 2009 as per the central bank data. This is a 65% decline compared to February last year, when inflows from remittances stood at $580 million.
In
our view, this government cannot function further. The trust placed in them has been broken. The confidence of the international community and investors has also been broken. The people's trust in the country has been destroyed too. When confidence and trust is low, the market staggers. Financial markets will not move forward without confidence. If there is no confidence, this government cannot progress. Confidence must be restored. The entire monetary board must be reappointed. All the decisions made by them were wrong. The way the rupee was floated was also wrong. According to the IMF report, the rupee must have been floated gradually to reflect the market price. Where is the letter addressed to the IMF? Who signed it? Two people, including the Minister of Finance and the Central Bank Governor, must sign off on it. Please present that letter. If that is done, some sort of confidence will be instilled that the government is preparing to enter negotiations with the IMF. Thereafter, the process of restructuring debt can be initiated. Of India spoke about establishing an electric grid connectivity within the region at the BIMSTEC summit. 3 islands in Jaffna that were due to be given to China for a project to generate power are now going to be handed over to India for a hybrid power project. Delft, Analathiv and Nainathiv islands in Jaffna are to be allocated for this relevant project. The pace at which these 3 islands were allocated for this project with India is astonishing. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed by the Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka and the Secretary to the Ministry of Power in the presence of the 2 foreign ministers of both nations on Monday night. The draft of the agreement was presented to the Cabinet on Monday evening. According to the agreement, the project is for the construction of a wind and solar power generation project and to set up a series of batteries to store the energy generated from them. Based on the agreement, the Government of India shall provide financial assistance of up to $11 million or tendered cost, whichever is lower, of which 75% would be as grant assistance and 25% under the existing credit line of $382.37 million with Sri Lanka to be executed through the Exim Bank of India. It adds that the Government of Sri Lanka shall bear all costs over and above the agreed financial assistance by the Government of India, including higher tendered cost, escalation, time and cost overruns, change in scope and specifications of the project or any other reason. In its quote-unquote Islands in Peril expose on attempts to award the islands of Nainathiv, Analathiv and Delft to China, Newsfirst pointed out that by doing so, Sri Lanka's energy sovereignty will be thrown at risk. At the same time, Newsfirst also revealed to the nation about the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka's surprise visit to the north of the country. Awarding the islands of Nainathiv, Analathiv and Delft to India by pushing away China does not mean that the threat to the country's energy sovereignty is no longer at risk. What benefit will Sri Lanka gain from these projects when a grant would be limited and the rest of the cost should be borne as a loan? The 3 islands of Nainathiv, Analathiv and Delft are of great strategic importance to Sri Lanka, and therefore was there no understanding of the situation that would arise by allowing India to go ahead with these projects. India has repeatedly called for electricity grid connectivity between the 2 nations. Today, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, quote, "It's also time now to go beyond discussions on electric grid connectivity and to operationalize it," in his statement to BIMSTEC. Therefore, isn't Sri Lanka's energy sovereignty actually at risk when such statements are made? The issue is not whether it is China or India or any other nation for that matter. No matter what country comes forward, are they not directly influencing the existence of a sovereign state? A meeting between leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa and Lord Michael Morris Naseby, a senior member of the Conservative Party in Britain and former Deputy Speaker of the British Parliament, took place today. The meeting was held at the opposition leader's office earlier today.
Right now we have youth unemployment which is growing. We have inflation at roughly 14%. Food inflation is 25%. So what we want here is a multifaceted approach. Going to international financial monetary institutions is not the sole instrument available. We have to use a variety of tools and policy instruments to ensure that Sri Lanka gets the best deal. The best deal in terms of financial bailout package that has minimal impact on society, minimal impact on the people of the country.
News First with the people.
Power cuts in certain areas will mean that many News First viewers could miss the primetime English bulletin on TV1 at 9 p.m. We have decided to repeat our news bulletin at 12 midnight and at 6:30 a.m. the following day on TV1 to help you stay updated. You can catch all our news bulletins online on the News First Facebook page and YouTube channel. News First, where the people come first.
News First with the people.
And with that, it's a wrap of primetime news here on TV1. For the News First team, I've been Newsfirst.lk along with our sign language interpreter Brian Zoom. Take care and good night.